Hey, good to see you.
I'll get you back.
Okay. What? Give it a little sideways thing. All right.
Start the slow fade. Yeah, very slow. Make sure everything's...
All right. Thank you.
Yay!
Pretext. The bitch's death is a tragedy. He said this to himself as he pulled the last remaining teeth from the back of her skull. Meanwhile, drunks and half-wit were hassled for acceptable forms of identification. Attempting to drown the ignited nerve in their belly, thought of Buddhist ways not to laugh, to hold their own for themselves. Baseball and paddle whips. For the time they'd been tasked with this before, the school days of old when blood enlightened a foreign brigade through the bound of their still stretching skin. The broken old brute above them stood, draped in drab, he knew this well. Hadn't forgot a single dime left short in his own prepubescent year. Damn right searching for his own loss through them. Scraping to earn his own bridge's toll. Knocking, waiting, anxiously prepping only the darkness he himself could imagine. Drunks and half-wit have yet to concern the weight of spiritual haze, the broad behind door 4. What it would mean to them to construct a life of their liking, to provide themselves in preference. To marry guilt and banish grief is to wade the river's chill and to expose the cheat of black. Space must be filled by the constraint of its essence, said the old brute to them. Space is bound to exist, and frantic cost to undo God will buy my peace. Again, the old brute said this to them. It was nothing drunks and half-wit would conceive. It was nothing their mass would endure. Well beyond the river's gate in its more common case of play, she had felt this aggression before. She knew all too well the lust beneath her dissector's grip. The defeated curse he wouldn't shed for fear of change. The abandonment of vanity and purpose was too much for his soft skin to bear. Besides, she was less. She was a whore. She sold the essence of life simply to extract that for her own practice. To live, he thought. Simply to live and breathe and lap its own plight. It was masturbatory. Choking the line of her own sustainment, she inbred the spirit of life. The gift he felt apt to soldier. He proved it so, as any tradesman would agree. Her clothes were washed, her nails were clipped, thrown in a jar with breadcrumbs to last their luster. I had noticed the scar on the pit bull's lip from walking weeks past. He was starved and violently so refrained from excessive chew and the inaugural stage of digestion. And all the while I thought I'd lose all 5 of my limbs. Her hand said this inside of the pit's belly, but the pit's belly did not respond. It instead rushed her descent into social oblivion and mannered forgetfulness. With such fathered haste you deport my commune! Her 5th and smallest finger said this from a jar atop his desk. Again, the pit's belly did not respond. Particular taste was far from the mild privilege it could afford. He, however, he was bathing his walk in the quiet brow of deliberation, dancing its own living room shack, simmering the milk in his skin to curdle. He knelt and spoke to the jar atop his desk, whispering the bridge of its own self-dependent breeze. He was in debt to craft, his own satori. Her 5th and smallest finger understood this, although his lyric did not. Its fascination laid solely in the vanity of indigenous success, the decentralization of able being. This was its undivided concern. This was the text of his plight. The illumination of her 5th and smallest finger was scripted in this way. It was the last of her kind, the first and only chance to see a landscape barren. It wept at this light. It was confronted with blindness. Her fifth and smallest finger would carry she into exit, and vessel the tear she was now fit to weep. She would then cry for her own self-delivered justice. She was happy to serve her ship, the tugging, boating excuse of our fleet. She scraped the sludge of those who follow and knew more than those of her unaccountable benefit. The broken old brute, drunk and half-wit, even the utter blankness of he. Tired, worn, and weathered, even her starry-eyed corpse was more sterile than most. She treated her time with pride. She was able. She could take it. The court of fate had long since liberated the promise of her own pursuit, long before he had thrown his hand, long before the broken old brute had figured his own loss. She had outlived them all. She had practiced the art of last life and served it with mission. She marked the extent of our dream and submitted to loyal truth, and like any charge of bias, she was all we have yet to be. The bitch's death is a tragedy.